Howdy y'all, I'm Troll Holder the Hillbilly Haggit. Welcome to my channel. Today I wanted to talk about how I found my way to my path, how I ended up finding my way to the craft and winding together the red and white threads. I should probably begin by saying that I'm very much in the camp that holds dear to that Robert Cochrane quote, "A witch is born and not made." But I think we have to look at the whole quote. And that whole quote is this: "A witch is born and not made. Or, if one is to be made, then tears must be spilt before the moon can be drawn. For the lady chooses whom she wills to be her lover, and those she loves the most she rends apart before making them wise." I think that's very much in line with my own experience and the experience of a lot of the witches that I am in contact with that are in the traditional houses. So I'm going to talk about how I found my way to being sort of awakened to the fact that I'm a witch, and how I found my way to the Feri Tradition in particular, how I became an initiate, because I don't think I hear this story out in the overculture at all. And because it's included, I want to sort of give it a little bit of a voice and put it out there for folks to understand that this is another way of moving through the world as a witch. So I should probably describe what the red and the white threads are first. So a red thread is the initiatory lineage that you're sort of given when you become initiated into any living tradition. And the white thread is the connection we have to the spirits, the initiation given to us directly from the spirits. And any good tradition will be a catalyzing force for the white thread. A red thread initiation wakes up the white thread and activates it. I think of it often as we ruddy the white thread. We sort of bloody it and make it carnal and here and now in this world. So I was always a strange, occult, loving child. I loved movies about witches and spirits and spooky things. I was very haunted as a child. I experienced very vivid, clairaudient and clairtangent experiences with the dead. Really young, I saw my dead maternal grandmother. Often, I would hear her whispering my name. I would feel spirits, the dead touch me. And for a long time, I shut it down because it was terrifying as a child to have those experiences. But I also was haunted by what I call my fetch mate, my fairy husband or spirit familiar. And from around age 7, I sort of had this experience of being haunted by this bogeyman figure who would come and go at times. And it sort of drove me to always sort of believe that there was an unseen reality around me, because I was having these experiences that my parents were spooked by, that folks couldn't explain. I was talked about as mentally ill as a child because I had these experiences. And it isn't that far a cry from what you see in sort of indigenous cultures with people who practice indigenous sorceries of whatever stripe, where they experience what anthropologists call shaman sickness. That was very much a young experience of my youth. So when I was a teenager, I sort of did all this experimenting with looking for religious paths. And I found my way eventually to my grandparents' church. My parents were not interested in religion at all when I was growing up. It just wasn't a thing. And I found my way to my grandparents' church and was confirmed in the United Methodist Church at like 12 or 13. But that same summer of my 13th year, I found a Time Life book in the library that was on witchcraft. And I was shocked that witches were a real thing in the real world. They weren't just a fantasy thing. And then that led me to a book on Wicca in my library that I found through the interlibrary loan system that was gold in rural Ohio, Appalachian Ohio as a child. So that first book, I believe, was Circle of the Cosmic Muse by Maria K. Sims, and it was republished under a different title some years ago. And then I found, all the famous books on Wicca that were really popular during the 90s, Scott Cunningham's books, Silver Ravenwolf. I ate that stuff up as a teenager. And then when I was in high school, I found Nigel Jackson's Masks of Misrule and Call of the Horned Piper. And those just like knocked my socks off because those sort of spoke to something deep down inside of me. When I was a senior in high school in 1999, I stumbled onto a website and that had some like queer, witchy digital art, and the artist was a student of the Feri Tradition, and I'd never heard of it. But then he mentions in his on his early website, he talked about the spiral dance, which I had a copy of, and so I found references in there to the Feri Tradition, and I was very intrigued by it. And eventually, I reached out to this artist online, emailed him when I started college in 2000, and he wrote back to me, and then eventually put me in touch with my with my fairy teacher, Gabriel Carrillo, also known as Karadak Apkador. He was the Magister of Bloodrose Coven and the Fairy Cauldron. He was the co-author of what's called the Corathalia material. And around the year 2000 is when I started studying with him long distance. He was starting this experiment of teaching people over the internet, which had never been done before. But that still required that I go out and spend physical time and space with him. And so I misappropriated my student loans in my undergrad to buy plane tickets to fly to California. And I would spend a couple weeks at a time studying and learning from my magister. Then in several years after studying there, I ended up moving in with my magister to take care of him. He was really ill, and when I moved in with him, he was diagnosed with cancer, AIDS-related cancer, and he ended up passing away within a year and a half of me moving there. During that time, I spent a whole year basically inside taking care of him. And then I ended up moving down to the Bay Area, and then a couple months later is when he passed away. Later on in 2007, I was initiated into the Feri Tradition by a makeshift coven of fairy initiates. And later on, in early 2008, I established a more full, unhaunted, awakened, conscious contact with my fetchmate. He showed me his face. And so that established a clear conduit for us to sort of begin unraveling our story. So going back to that quote that I was talking about earlier, the Cochrane quote, I think that it really speaks to the unspooling and reweaving of the self, the creation of the witch self that you need to go through by being initiated by the spirits, by the way thread. That also speaks to me of the reality that, of the full quote, that the tears must be spilt before the moon can be drawn means, at least I believe this means trauma. This means an experience that unravels you, that shakes you and knocks loose your ego, that makes room for the spirits in you. She loves, though she loves most, she rends apart before making wise. That you have to sort of be reduced to your constituent parts and repolished and then re-sewn together before you can really, really activate and hold the witch fire. Really have access to what we call and be able to produce what we call the witch blood, which is a substance we can use to feed the spirits. I know that some people think of it as a physical DNA thing, but that's not how it's used. That's not where the word actually came from, which is from the initiatory houses. And it sort of got out of its context and it's been misappropriated in a very dramatic way. But Witch blood essentially is another way of talking about the red thread. It's your initiatory lineage. And, initiatory houses are spiritual families that take you in through adoption. So that is the profundity of it. People take the time to adopt you into their clan, their coven, their family, and you have each other's backs. The goal is to find people that you can practice sorcery with for the rest of your life and beyond. There very much is this idea, this belief, this faith, this fairy faith, that we are drawn back together in different lifetimes. Our souls transmigrate and we're reborn as witches again and again to keep working together, to keep developing our souls together, and to possibly work big pieces of magic together that take multiple lifetimes to achieve. I've mentioned in my previous video that there is an eschatology to witchcraft. There's a reason within the initiatory traditions that we do witchcraft. We're going somewhere with this. So thank you for listening to my rant on how I found my path. You can find me in the places that I'll put up next, and thank you.